What is up, everybody? Barneasy Jones here. Hope you're having a great day so far. I'm coming at you today with some footage, gameplay impressions, and mechanics info about Dark Souls 3. I was invited to play Dark Souls 3 at a castle in Northern California, along with a handful of content creators and select members of the gaming media. For one night at the Castello de Amorosa, a group of wayward hollows descended upon a dimly lit hall deep inside the century-old building, with the green hue of 30-some-odd Razer brand laptops powering our roughly 2-hour quest into this new Souls game. So, let us begin telling the tales of what happened inside those very halls. One note before we jump right in, this video contains no spoilers. None. You won't find any lore bits, enemy/boss names, or anything of the sort. This is about mechanics, gameplay impressions, and comparing those two items across the Souls franchise. Enjoy the rest of the trailer, and I'll see you at the end. So I want to start by kind of going over the format of the video, how the information is going to be laid out. What I'm going to start with is doing the answering the most popular questions that were, upvoted the highest over on the Reddit post that was made before I attended the event. And I feel like, because it's kind of, I want to give community impressions, I want to make sure that your questions are answered, the ones that were most voted, that the most people wanted to get the answers to. After we finish off those main questions over on Reddit, what I'm going to do is read to you verbatim the notes that I took on my phone the moment we stepped out of the 2-hour gameplay. So literally, you're going to get the instant, like the moment I was able to start jotting down notes. Those notes will be read back to you just so you can reflect on my state of mind at the moment, and then I'm going to go into a little bit more detail on those notes as I read them one by one. It may get a little bit jumping here and there, but try to keep up. It shouldn't be too bad. Yeah, so let's get started. Right, so let's start off with looks like the Reddit comments. Jester Soul over on Reddit, one of the top voted comments, asks multiple parts to the question, but let's just go over the first one right now. Sword arts, how does it affect player stamina bar, attack speed, etc.? Well, first of all, let's talk a little bit about sword arts and what they are, what they do. So essentially, you could think of sword arts as another strong attack that your character has access to, and it's specific to the type of weapon that you're using. So the ones that we can confirm are the longsword guard crushes. So the point of it is to break your opponent's either block or attack stance, whatever the case may be. The Zweihander or ultra great swords, it's like a golf swing, so it's a pop-up. So it's golf swings are back essentially. Another interesting thing about the ultra greatsword specifically is when you go into the weapon art, that act or that animation of going into the weapon art has its own like extra poise break, I guess, that you hit. So that's an interesting thing. The Legion Scimitar, which is kind of like the falchion in this game, its weapon art is a flurry of attacks, similar to the Gold Tracer strong attack. And what else is there? And the axe, last but not least, the infantry axe, if you will. It looks like the weapon art is a self buff that gives you extra damage. So just to give you an idea of the numbers, when I was fighting against like regular enemy hollows or dreglings, if you will, a regular attack was 89 damage, but against the hollows it was 115. So there was a noticeable sizable increase in damage dealt. So that's a thing. What else can I tell you about the sword arts? As far as like the stamina bar consumption, it does take up a fair amount of stamina, you know, more than a regular light attack or even a regular strong attack of that weapon. And the attack speed, it's varying. Some of them are faster, some of them have like a noticeable, some of the weapon arts have a noticeable wind up to the animation, like a startup, if you will. So it's just different from each one as far as the stamina, you know, usage and the attack speed. Bonfire system, how does it work? You create bonfire you want, or they scripted. There were bonfires that we were able to sit at and revive at upon death in the game. We unfortunately didn't get to try out any of like the sacrifice mechanic or anything like cool like that. It wasn't a part of the demo that we played. So I can't really tell you anything new about bonfires other than what we already know. That you know, when you die, you revive at them. And also there's no hollowing whatsoever, so there's no like, you know, you lose a little bit of health when you revive after you die, or you lose your human status, if you will. You know, your visually you look like, you know, more hollow, if you will. So it's probably just because it's a demo for now, but it's worth being said that that's how it works so far that we've seen. Third part of the question, Jester Soul says, if there's an equipment menu, how many ring slots you have? There was no equipment menus at all. There was a HUD, there was a heads-up display, but it didn't have any kind of you know, like stats or anything of that sort. If there is a great sword, how fast is the attack speed? I heard somewhere in the E3 demo that it was faster in previous games. Well, we didn't get a chance to use any great swords, but certainly we used an ultra great sword. You could think of it as like a Zweihander, if you will. And I would say the speed is definitely on the faster end. Generally, the game plays pretty fast and the animations are pretty fast. So I would definitely put it like Dark Souls 1 or Demon Souls as far as how fast the great sword swings are. It's really fast. Like it's really fun to use the ultra great swords in this game. Yeah. So and number 5, is there a side dodge movement or only rolls? The rolling literally works just like Demon Souls, just like Dark Souls 1, where once you're locked on, you're only able to roll in 4 directions. Yeah, there's no free run system when you're locked on like in Dark Souls 2. A lot of the game, and you'll hear this more and more as we go through it, a lot of the game is, you know, you're gonna hear me say Demon Souls or Dark Souls 1, because it's just, those are the feelings that you get anytime you compare it to the previous games and like look for similarities. It almost always points to those 2 games. Okay, next question from Reddit, looks like user dis_pair would love details on how humanity, hollowing, and human form plays out. There really aren't too many details I can give you at the moment. Anytime the player character would die, they would revive at the last bonfire touched, and there was multiple bonfires in the demo that we played. But as far as hollowing or human form or anything like that, you kept reviving as a human without any HP penalty. So I don't know if it's a demo thing or that's how it's going to be in the full game, but I feel like it's because it's a demo. That's why. So I guess stay tuned for more info on those things, you know, once further builds are played. Rashandal asks, I'd love to get more info about magic. What types are there? What kind of spells? Do pyro flames exist? How's the scaling? Can you finally aim them easier without binoculars? We like, none of the builds, like when you loaded up the demo, you were able to play 2 characters. One was a sword and board and the other one was an infantry soldier, and sword and board came with straight sword, and well, actually just came with the straight sword, and then the infantry soldier came with an infantry axe. And I say infantry axe because it had like a similar moveset from the Dark Souls 2 infantry axe, so that's why I specifically mentioned that one. But as far as magic, as far as schools of magic, you know, pyromancies, hexes, sorceries, miracles, anything like that, can't confirm or deny because we didn't see any of it. Did not see any of it. So I'm sure it's in the game, I'm sure, but as far as what types and whatnot, I can't tell you because we didn't see it. About general stuff, what stats are there? Well, I can tell you right now that there was no stats that I could check when I went to the options menu. It was just like camera and like, you know, changing the jump, things like that. You know, from circle or the L3 click button. So that's good that they brought that back. As far as backstabs, how close to Dark Souls 1 are they? They are, I would say, extremely close. There is a little bit of a delay between the backstab and the actual backstab animation. You'll notice it when you play it yourself, or if you really slow down the videos and watch them as far as backstabs are concerned. It's not as snap into backstab as Dark Souls 1 or Demon Souls, but it's definitely nowhere near Dark Souls 2 with its kind of click into backstab you know, system, where you have to connect with your fist first. Once your fist connects, then the backstab animation goes through. It's way more in the Demon Souls, Dark Souls 1 category, just like the E3 reactions that myself and the other content creators that were at E3 and got to watch the Dark Souls 3 gameplay told everyone. It is, you know, literally just like Demon Souls and Dark Souls 1 again, the critical system. Some people like it, some people really dislike it, but that is what it is. Yeah. Cold_damage over on Reddit again asks, some of these are probably in here already, but here goes. Do headshots stagger like Dark Souls 1 or Dark Souls 2? In Dark Souls 2 you could infinite stunlock with a bow. There was a bow in the demo, but here's the crazy thing. Nobody in the group found it. Like literally nobody. And keep in mind, we're talking a lot of really strong players that were there. You know, like it really ran the gamut as far as like casual players to, you know, mega hardcore, really into like the nitty gritty of like PvE and exploration and fine tuning. So yeah, but nobody found the bow. It was really interesting. I'm really surprised. So I can't like, you know, mention headshots or anything, how they work. As Ravioli step back. So here's an interesting part that I'm glad you mentioned. Backsteps, like the whole reverse roll or reverse backstep, that is like, you know, a pretty big part of Dark Souls 1 is unfortunately no longer a thing. So I could be the first to tell you guys that that little cool technique in the Souls, like in the Souls PvP, is absolutely gone. There's no more, you know, ravioli step or reverse roll or anything like that. So all those reverse roll backstabs and stuff, those are all entirely gone. Unfortunately, I thought it was pretty cool. Nice little, definitely flashy, if not super useful, but definitely like a cool flashy technique. But yeah, unfortunately, that's no longer part of the game. You see here, can you use the sword art during an attack string, or do you have to wait for the animation to reset? You can use a sword art. The thing is, with the sword arts, you have to go into the sword art, like there's a startup to the animation of going into the sword art, and it's never like super fast, because the whole point is the sword arts are really powerful. Oh, and one more thing, they're finite, meaning unlike what the E3 demo that we saw, the weapon arts are, because in that build, the E3 build, the weapon arts were, you know, infinite. Like you just roll around and, you know, use your weapon arts. But in this new build, there's the counter in the top left under the Covenant sign, and that says there's a number, and it drains. That number goes down every time you use a weapon art, and depending on the weapon art that you use, depending on the weapon art that you use, it might take 1 from the counter, or it might take up to 3. Like in the case of the Ultra Greatsword, it took 3 points every time you use the weapon art. So it varies as far as how much it drains, depending on what weapon art you're activating. And you know, just like any other resource, if you touch a bonfire, that 20 weapon arts that you're allotted refills. So that's kind of a cool change from the E3 build to this one. Does your second weapon slot show up on the character? No. Like, and here's one thing I want to point out for sheaths. Anybody that was asking about sheaths, unfortunately, it's just like Dark Souls 1, where when you have your weapon pulled out, you may or may not have a sheath. The weapon may or may not. Usually it does, but unfortunately, when you put it away, it disappears. There is no like sheath sticking around, or like you're not able to sheath your weapon, which is really, really cool. A lot of other games, they allow you to do that, and it's like definitely playing more into like the role play, like samurai honor duel kind of vibe. You could totally go with something like that, but unfortunately it's not a thing. Sheaths are only out and about when you have your weapon out. As soon as you you know, put your weapon away or anything, the sheath absolutely disappears and is replaced by the new weapon's sheath. So yeah. Can you dual wield? Can you two-hand the left-hand weapon? So dual wielding is, at least from what we were able to do at the demo, I tried it with every single weapon. The whole like hold triangle and or hold Y to like power stance, or to two-hand your offhand weapon, that's entirely gone. Like all those Dark Souls 2 things doesn't exist in this game. It's not a thing. It's back to like Demon Souls, Dark Souls 1, where when you two-hand your main weapon, and some weapons like the Legion Scimitar, for example, you literally cannot two-hand that weapon. It's either you're one-handing it or you are dual wielding, you know, using two scimitars. Yeah, so you can't two-hand the left weapon, and dual wielding only with certain weapons like the Legion Scimitar. Are we back to fast, medium, and fat roll, or is it like Dark Souls 2? There was no menu system. I can't tell you like as far as like percentages, but as far as the rolls, they felt really good, and definitely in the fast roll territory. And just like movement in general, I know that was a huge issue for a lot of players that may or may not have liked Dark Souls 2. The movement, if they came over from Demon Souls or Dark Souls 1. That's something that a lot of people actually messaged me before the event, and even after, when they found out, oh, there's an embargo and we can't just leak the info right away, was they were like, just tell us about the movement. The most important thing for us is how does the game feel? And I'm here to tell you that it feels most like Demon Souls, Dark Souls 1, and a little bit of Bloodborne. It doesn't feel, when you play it, at all like Dark Souls 2. Like the free run system isn't there when you're locked on. You can't free run around. You can't roll in any direction that you'd like when you're locked on. It's the same like 4-axis rolls, if you will. So again, love it or hate it, you might like it, you might feel like it's not as good, but that's what's back for that's what's on the plate for Dark Souls 3. This is actually a lot of good questions by Cold Damage. Is the frame rate smooth? Going back to Dark Souls 1 from Scholar was painful. So I'm actually glad you brought that up. This is like an interesting part, something that you'll notice in a lot of FromSoft games. The technical side is always kind of, I don't want to say lacking, but it seems like a lot of their games, they really focus on the atmosphere, the lore, the combat systems, and they do, you know, 8+, 10 out of 10 jobs on those things. But the technical aspects, a lot of times it just you know, lag or whatnot. It's not as good compared to some other, you know, big release games. This one, I can tell you, and like anytime I would roll into a bunch of boxes, breaking them at the same time as there were a ton of enemies on the screen, things would start to chug. You know, it's you know, just like an alpha or a beta. It's a demo at this point. I'm sure it'll be cleaned up before release. Same thing with Bloodborne. If you remember the alpha presentations of that game, it was also Lag City, but they kind of fixed it, and now, you know, on launch, the only really like issue stuff with Bloodborne is the heavy particle effects scenes. Hopefully it should be addressed by the time, and addressed and optimized by the time the game actually comes out. But it's certainly worth mentioning that, you know, it has been something that From Software has shown in the past as far as their games, as far as the technical aspect. But there was that, you know, heavy FPS dip when you're, again, breaking a bunch of boxes with a ton of enemies swarming you. The game just, you know, it suffers. It really suffers. So I'm hopeful that they're going to fix that. It should be better, but we'll see about it. Is poise back to Dark Souls 1, or do you still get staggered by attacks at high poise like Dark Souls 2? In other words, are poise backstabs back? LOL. Okay, so this is an interesting point that you bring up as far as poise goes. It may be a point where I actually have a different opinion than maybe some of the other content creators were there, but I feel like it's appropriate because this is literally like the notes that I had written down. This is, you know, what I had written down about poise, so it's important that we all share our individual reactions and impressions, and yeah. So what I had written down about poise was that poise is gone, and that it's basically like Demon Souls again as far as hyper armor is concerned. And if you're wondering what hyper armor is, and like how it worked in Demon Souls, some of the heavier strength weapons, like for example, one of the biggest weapons that like this is how you use the weapon in PvP, or just even in general, the great axe in Demon Souls, the attack, it had a one hit of hyper armor, so you know you could tank a hit even though in Demon Souls there was no poise. If you started your attack animation with the great axe, you could tank a single hit as long as that hit didn't kill you, and your swing would still come out. Your swing would still go out there. So it's kind of like you have to use the moveset in a trade kind of manner, and anytime you hit the opponent, you always outdamage them. So it totally works, and it's a really fun way to play when you incorporate things like the hyper armor into your gameplay. But keep in mind, you know, it's just the demo. It's something that they certainly could change as far as poise goes. But I did notice that anytime from the mega heavy knight enemies and the boss to even like the dreglings and like the really weak like mob enemies, everything that would hit me would break my poise on the first hit. The only times I was able to successfully poise a hit or tank a hit is when I was doing something like an attack animation, like an R2, for example, with the greatsword, or even with the ultra greatsword, or even an R1. I was able to tank through it and connect with my attack. And I want to say, even in the trailer that was leaked, there's one scene where they're kind of rolling around, and there's one scene where you see the player character rolling around and trading, like eating a hit and trading a hit with the Ultra Greatsword strong attack right out of the roll. Like they roll and they do the Ultra Greatsword strong attack. And so it's not poise at work, but that's hyper armor at work. So really interesting. I really like the way that hyper armor worked in Demon Souls. But I was also a fan of, for the most part, the way that poise worked in Dark Souls 1. So I'm interested to see kind of what else they incorporate about poise. Hopefully that answers some questions around the poise break. Will we get the humanity consumable back? I have no idea. That certainly wasn't an item that we picked up. Speaking of items that we did pick up, I can just throw out a couple different items, like just bam, just hammer out a couple items here. Things like Divine Blessings, they are back in the game. Like I can confirm that right now. They work just like in previous Souls games, where you use it, and you know, as soon as you use it, you get your entire health bar back. There's no lag. Same thing with Estus. It's really interesting when you use Estus in Dark Souls 3. Unlike in other titles, previous titles, it like doesn't slowly. You don't slowly get your HP back. It literally chunks the extra HP right back onto your life bar. Like it just throws it on there. There is no slowly filling up of the HP bar or anything. Like no, like it just boom, you're healed again. So the Estus is very strong in Dark Souls 3. Obviously Divine Blessings are strong. I don't think I need to mention that. There was green blossoms, there was fire bombs, there was fire resin, all the classic items you'd expect from a medieval Souls game are back. So that's interesting. One more note that I want to mention about the items, which I feel like it's a huge buff, and I'm really happy about this, is the free aiming items are, the ability to free aim your items. Not only is it back, back to how it was like in Dark Souls 1, but it's got an unbelievably strong buff. I mean, there was a moment when, because keep in mind, I wasn't, as much as everybody else was running around exploring stuff, I took time away from doing that because I was like, I need to figure out more mechanic stuff. I'm curious, and I know the community is curious too. There was a moment when I started using all the fire bombs in my inventory and just seeing how fine I could get the like I could play with the free aim system. And let me tell you, it is insanely powerful now. Like a flick, the flick of the analog stick, if you will, it, like I felt like an MLB pro throwing a 90-mile-per-hour baseball. That's how much the free aim system has been buffed. That's one of the things that wasn't my favorite about Dark Souls 2, was that you really don't have the free aiming ability to flick like black fire bombs and whatnot, or Lloyd's talismans, really be able to like manually aim them and like do it up in that regard. So that's really cool. I'm really glad that that's back. That's the thing. Right, and so that's gonna do it for this video, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you learned something about Dark Souls 3. I'm gonna put out a part 2 because there's a lot of info that I haven't touched upon. So there will be a part 2 of the Dark Souls 3 initial gameplay impressions. If you want to make sure that you're updated about that, I would say check out the description. I'm gonna put my various social media links that I'll be updating as soon as that part 2 is ready, which it should be ready by the end of this week or early next week. So look out for that. That's it. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in Dark Souls 3.